There is a saying which goes, 6 feet of earth makes all men equal. On the one hand, we agree with this statement, but on the other hand, this video proves it wrong. Some people from all over the world have come up with unusual and straight up bizarre ways of burials, which made them stand out from others even after dying. In this video, we will cover some weird ways people or their ashes got buried. So, if you haven't left yet, bear with me to find out who found himself spending an eternity in a Pringles can. Number 10. Inside the owner's favorite Corvette. George Swanson, a former US Army sergeant during World War II and a beer distributor in Pennsylvania, chose to spend eternity with his beloved 1984 Corvette. He had been planning his automobile burial for some time, buying 12 funeral plots at a cemetery in order to ensure that his beloved car would fit in the grave with him. But despite all planning efforts, the cemetery backed out of the deal. The reason was concerns about vandalism, but George's widow, Caroline Swanson, fought for her husband to spend forever alongside his car. After tiring weeks of negotiations, the cemetery relented but requested that all the fluids had to be completely drained out of the vehicle. And finally, in the year 1994, the ashes were placed on the driver's seat of his car. George always said he lived a fabulous life, and he went out in fabulous style, says Caroline Swanson, and I could not agree more. Number 9. Buried as Dracula. I hope that so-called grave robbers haven't approached the grave of legendary Hungarian-American actor Bela Lugosi, because if they dare to open his coffin, they would find themselves facing a real-life bloodthirsty Dracula in his grave, and trust me, you would not want to be in their place. Lugosi, also known as the King of Horror, was buried in full original Dracula costume and cape per the request of his son, Bela Lugosi Jr. and 5th wife, in one of the cemeteries in California. Lugosi had appeared in more than 100 movies, but millions of audiences will forever remember him as Dracula. According to his son, Bela Lugosi died with a script in his hands in the year 1956, and after that, he literally took the role to his grave and hasn't broken the role since. It might not be something you want to think about very often, but it is still better than real Transylvania aristocrat Dracula, who is buried in the grave and is waiting to be approached.
Good night.
But before we get into it, you know what to do, guys. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our new videos that you will find interesting, we know for sure. Now let's get back to it.
Number 8. In a golden shoe casket. It is sometimes said that a funeral should reflect the life of the deceased. A Nigerian shoemaker is a perfect example of that. A popular artist from Nigeria, known as 𝗘𝗟𝗦𝗘, was buried in a giant and very realistic shoe-like casket in 2015. A lot of people attended the burial ceremony. According to the reports, 2 of his sons, who are graduates of fine arts, made the casket. The photos of them working on the construction of a shoe were shared on social media. Understandably, some people found this approach of honoring the late shoemaker strange. In their defense, it is a way of celebrating the life of the people who are gone. But we will never know if the deceased wanted to be buried in a shoe casket or not. Number 7. Inorganic burial pod. Next on our list is a bizarre burial alternative to turn your body into a tree after you die. Designers Raoul Bretzel and Anna Satelli suggest that we say goodbye to coffins and use organic burial pods instead. Here's how it works. The biodegradable plastic shell, which has an egg shape, is buried with the ashes inside of it, or with a body, which is placed in a fetal position. Once buried, an organic burial capsule turns the corpse into nutrients for a tree that will grow out of the remains. There have been some speculations about whether or not they were available, but they're actually selling for $457 on the Capsula Mundi website. It's just a friendly reminder that a tree, under whose shade you are sitting, might have been a person in the past. Number 6. Fred 𝗦𝗬𝗘's Egyptian coffin. The ancient world is full of examples of burial traditions that seem strange to many people now, but Fred 𝗦𝗬𝗘 was not among those people. Fred 𝗦𝗬𝗘, a retired postal worker, crafted his own Egyptian-themed coffin, or should we say, a sarcophagus. It took him 25 years and $10,000 to fulfill his dream, which he's had since he was 8 years old. A dream to die like an Egyptian. A pretty unusual desire for a child, right? But the story begins even earlier, back in 1992 when Fred was born. He explained, "I was born in 1922. The year Howard Carter and the Earl of Carnarvon discovered King Tutankhamun's tomb in Egypt." And to fulfill his wish, Fred 𝗏𝗏𝗏 taught himself expert carpentry skills from scratch and studied ancient Egyptian designs through second-hand textbooks. In 2015, he died at the age of 92. Like an Egyptian, just like he wanted. Number 5. In politician's second-hand Mercedes-Benz. As we saw, people are exploring new ways for burial nowadays. Apparently, being buried in a vehicle is the most common one. Bufton Pitso, a prominent South African politician, was buried in his beloved second-hand Mercedes as requested. He passed away in April 2020, and due to the coronavirus outbreak, only few people gathered at the burial site. But the photos taken at the bizarre funeral went viral for obvious reasons. Pitso, who is dressed in a white suit, sits in the driver's seat with a seatbelt on and his hands on the wheel. According to his family members, he once owned an entire fleet of luxurious Mercedes cars, but he had to sell them. And just 2 years before the end of his life, he managed to buy a used Mercedes, but shortly after, it broke down. But Pitso, as a loyal friend, was spending much of his time on it. And it looks like he still is. Number 4. An underwater cemetery, Neptune Memorial Reef. I am pretty sure most of us have dreamed about living under the sea. As far as we know, people can't really do that, but what about deceased people? The largest man-made reef and world's first underwater mausoleum, located 3 miles off the coast of Florida's Key Biscayne, opened in 2007 after a number of difficulties. And after that, it became a permanent home to many cremated people who literally sleep with the fishes. Inspired by Atlantis, it is composed of elaborate cement columns and lion statues. Neptune Society is happy to inform you that visits to the reef are free and accessible to all visitors. All my faint-hearted watchers out there, first of all, why are you still here? And secondly, which one do you prefer? Underwater or normal cemetery? Number 3. Ashes in a Pringle can. A lot of people are struggling to decide between the burial and the cremation, and then there are those who know exactly what they want. Getting buried in a Pringles can, for example. The designer of the Pringles can, Fredric John Baur, was so proud of his invention that he got buried in one, per his request, of course. Baur had first told his children about his wish back in the 1980s. After his death, they weren't quite sure if Baur was joking or not. But then on their way to the funeral home, they purchased an original flavored Pringles can and honored his request by placing part of his ashes in a Pringles container in his grave. All of the ashes couldn't fit in, so the rest of his remains were placed in an urn buried along with the can, and some given to a grandson. Number 2. US Navy Gunner's Sea Burial. Next on our list is probably the most heart-stirring story you'll hear, provided with the footage you'll only see once in a lifetime. Lois Edward Dean was one of the only US aviators to be buried at sea inside his aircraft. He was a gunner on a TBM Avenger, a torpedo bomber, during the Battle of Manila. Reportedly, he was injured before participating in the Battle of Manila, but instead of recovering on a hospital ship, he opted to stay with his crew, Pilot Lieutenant Robert Cosgrove and Radio Man Digby Denzik, and he was killed exactly on that fateful mission. The 23-year-old Oklahoma native was attacked by Japanese flak, which damaged him so badly that it was decided to leave him in the plane. In the clip, we see that the aircraft is ceremoniously rolled off the fantail of the ship and was taken by the waves of the sea. Wow. Number 1. A man buried riding his motorcycle. Last but not least is another gentleman who was fond of planning ahead. Billy Standley has always told friends and family that he wanted to be buried riding his 1967 Harley-Davidson motorcycle. And guess what? His dying wish came true. The former rodeo rider and motorcycle enthusiast developed a detailed plan of his funeral. Standley and his sons designed a brace that hooked into the bike and led up his back. They also designed a casket, which was bright green, just like the fields Bill imagined riding through for eternity. He even made arrangements with the funeral home and local authorities. Bill was towed from the funeral home to the cemetery in a casket, encouraging others to join his monumental ride. Bill is now in his final resting spot as he rides his motorcycle through the green fields.
Well, that was it for this video. What did you guys think of our picks? Let us know in the comment section down below. We post the most amazing and interesting videos one could imagine. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our new videos.